welcome back to Kimmell and Cox, your source for all things entertainment. I'm Michelangelo. Sorry, I was kind of in turtle mode there a little bit. Hey everybody, welcome back to Kimmell and Cox. I'm Keith Cox. I'm joined as always by my good friend Dylan Kimmell. And today we're going to be talking about a movie franchise that is very special to me and was a huge part of my childhood, and I believe that's true for Dylan as well.
Oh yes, definitely. I did not get the chance to grow up on the cartoon because those were in the 80s. I'm not even sure when they went off air, but it was probably before.
Yeah, I think it was before your time, but
yeah.
But we are talking, of course, about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first film in the franchise. But actually, before we get into that, we do have a special announcement for everyone. We promised a few weeks ago that we had some big news coming your way, and when we promise that we have big news, by golly, we deliver on that. So, but Kimmell and Cox is going to Lexington Comic Con this year. We have been accepted into the Comic Con. It's going to be March 23rd through the 26th at Central Bank Center, right here in our hometown of Lexington, Kentucky. So if you happen to be in the area, or even if you're not in the area, come out and say hi. We'd love to see you. We're going to have a booth out there, and hopefully we'll actually have some cool stuff that we can give you as well. Maybe some T-shirts or something along those lines. And but this is going to be huge for the podcast, just to be included in something like that. And I think it's really going to do wonders for the podcast. Hopefully we'll get to meet a lot of people through that, and maybe kind of do a live stream or something. I think we're thinking about doing a live stream on one of the days that we're there. Yeah. And maybe we'll even get to talk to some of the other guests that are going to be attending the con. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there, and everybody mark your calendars and get ready for that, because it's going to be a great time. So
yes,
but
lots of fun.
But today, again, we're going to be talking about the first film in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise, which was released on March 30th, 1990. This was at the height of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mania, and of course there were some things that preceded that, which we'll get into, but the movie was written by Bobby Herbeck and Todd W. Langen, based on characters created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, which were comic book creators, because the Ninja Turtles were originally a comic book before they had a cartoon series.
And originally was a lot more grittier too.
It was. And the movie was directed by Steve Barron, and starring Judith Hoag as April O'Neil, Elias Koteas as Casey Jones, Raymond Serra as Chief Stearns, Michael Turney as Daniel Pennington, James Sato as the Shredder, Jay Patterson as Charles Pennington, and Toshishiro Obata as Tatsu. And featuring, now when we get into talking about the Turtles themselves, which are of course the true stars of the movie, really there were, it basically took three different people to play each turtle. So when you talk about, casting, it's like, who do you choose? Do you choose the voice actors? Do you choose the actors, the performers who were in the suit, in the turtle suits? So I guess those would really be the two main ones. For example, Leonardo was played by Brian Tochi, was the voice of Leonardo. and then the performer who was in the Leonardo suit was David Foreman. And then for Donatello, it was Corey Feldman providing the voice. And anybody who grew up in the 80s especially will be very familiar with Corey Feldman. And,
probably the most
his
famous voicing that one of the Turtles, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge, success as a child actor. And then the in-suit performer for him was Leif Tilden. For Michelangelo, he was voiced by Robbie Rist, who some of you he'd probably be best known for playing Oliver on the Brady Bunch. He made a few appearances on the Brady Bunch.
I'd never gotten into Brady
as
Bunch,
a kid,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then the in-suit performer for him was Michelin Sisti. And for Raphael, he was the only turtle in which both the voice actor and the in-suit performer were one and the same.
That's impressive.
Yes, Josh Pies played Raphael, and I think the reason for that was because he played Raphael with a very thick New York accent, which was kind of really set him apart from the other turtles, and I guess they were. The casting directors were impressed. I think they gave each one of the in-suit performers a chance to do the voice, so they could do both. But for different reasons, they chose to go with other actors to dub the voices, except for him. They were, I guess, the most impressed with his portrayal of that.
I mean, it does. I mean, honestly, when I think of Raphael, that is the voice that comes to mind.
It is for me too. It fits really well with his attitude, because he's very sarcastic and has hot-headed, and just has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. But I can remember being super excited about this movie when it came out, because I was already like a full-blown Ninja Turtles fanatic. Now, it started as a comic book in 1984, and there are some noticeable differences between the comic book and the movie. The movie was mostly based on the early Turtles comics, like the first few that were released.
Yeah.
But there were some differences.
You own any of the comics?
I used to. There may still be some floating around at my mom's house somewhere in the attic or something like that. So might have to try to dig those up, because I didn't have any first editions or anything like that. But I did have some of the earlier comics, because I was introduced to the Turtles through a friend of mine who was a little older than me. He was about 2.5, 3 years older than me, and he was really heavy into comics and stuff like that. And but I first became familiar with the Ninja Turtles through the first animated series, which debuted in 1987. This was the weird thing. And I don't think anybody else has done this before, but basically the toy line, the Ninja Turtles toy line, was created from the comic books. They tied everything in together because they saw an opportunity to really, they were more concerned about marketing the Turtles as a toy line, rather than, at that time they didn't have any plans to make like a series or movies or anything like that. And so the comics came first, and then the toys, and then the animated series. Typically, you wouldn't get action figures or anything until
until the show came out,
right? Yeah. So I was already very familiar with the Turtles through the toys and through the animated series, and so when I found out they were going to be making a live action movie, and when I saw the very first trailer for it. I was just, as a kid, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing, because the way the Turtles looked and moved and everything, it was everything you could have wanted, in making that transition, from an animated show to a live action show, because a lot of times those movies don't turn out very well. They're done very cheap, and
this was not cheap looking at all. Like
No.
those puppets and everything, the suits, they looked amazing. I mean, they look like crap now because obviously we're decades
yeah, I mean,
away from that era now.
We've advanced so far with technology and everything, but for its time, it was, state of the art animatronics. It was the turtles were created by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which I'm sure most of you know. Jim Henson is famous for creating the Muppets.
Well, let me backtrack on what I just said there. When I said that they looked like crap now, I meant like they aged. Like, if you actually look in the museum, like
right.
they age. I just now thought, I was like, wait, I didn't mean it like that. They still look amazing.
Yeah, if you in the movie, they do look amazing. But if you, I get what you're saying. Like you can look those up on YouTube. There's clips of like some of the original turtle suits are still floating around out there, and they've deteriorated so much over the years that they're like the skin, like the foam latex
like
skin is it's like pulling away from their face, and and it's almost like you can see the animatronic skeletons underneath the suits. Their teeth are all hanging out, and their eyes look weird, and but yeah, in the movie they were they looked fantastic, and they had lots of different types of suits. They had the full animatronic suits, which
I hate to see what Splinter would have looked like.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that reminds me. I did forget to. Can't believe I forgot to include Splinter in in the cast list, but and he was voiced by Kevin Clash. But there was no in-suit performer for Splinter. There wasn't a real person inside the suit. That was a full puppet. Because he was so much smaller. That like the turtles were human-sized, and Splinter was a little bit smaller. But anyway, like the suits were so advanced. Like they had animatronics like inside the heads of the suits. Like they were basically these motors, inside the heads, and those were connected to. There was like a kind of like a backpack that was inside the shells on the suit that was concealed by the shells, but there was all this cabling and everything that was running up into the motors and stuff inside the head to make the mouths move and in different directions, and you had puppeteers that were on the side, like off to the side on the set, that were controlling the movements of the mouth and stuff, and then the actors obviously were moving around inside the suits and adding further, animation and enthusiasm to the performances. But for its time, I mean, Jim Henson even commented on it at that time that was the most advanced animatronics that he had ever worked with.
And Jim Henson was the master of puppetry. Like I don't think anyone could ever compete with that guy.
No. Not even today. And of course, his son Brian took over all that after he passed. Jim Henson actually passed just about 2 months before this movie was released. So this was the last project that he worked on.
That explains why in the sequels they look different.
Yeah, they do have a very different look and feel to them.
The first one, they looked the best.
Yeah, the first one is definitely the gold standard of the trilogy of original Turtles movies. But it was sad that that he never got to see the success of that, because he really, after he got involved with it, like he did it as a favor to the director, Steve Barron, because he felt that the film was too violent, where he was primarily known for doing kids movies and shows and everything. Like he thought this was a little bit too much, a little bit too dark, a little bit too violent, and he wasn't sure that he really wanted his name associated with it, but he did it as a favor to the director, and of course we're all glad he did, because I don't think that without his help, I don't think that the movie would have been as good as successful as it was.
It's an interesting thing, thinking that the film is too violent and everything like that. Like, okay, so children's movies, he's done children's movies and everything like that. I think there's a fine line between too violent. Like, to me, too violent means you're on the edge of being R-rated.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like there
wasn't blood and guts or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were using weapons and they were using
they never
ninjutsu.
even really
They were kicking and punching people, but it wasn't.
They never really stabbed anybody either with those.
No. I mean, they had, Leonardo has a sword and Raphael has his sais, but they never actually, they kind of used them almost in more of like a defensive position or like a dueling kind of thing rather than actually, they're not stabbing people with them. But
I don't understand the criticism there, but I guess I could see it for its time because those even parents of that time were kind of like, I don't know about this one, because even just to compare it to the Batman movie, because so Batman '89, and then the Batman Returns came out, and parents were like, oh my goodness, I'm afraid to take my child to see these movies. They're too violent and too dark and everything. I'd say the same was probably prevalent with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is funny because I just don't see it. I see it as a family picture right there.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, now granted, one of the things that I think parents may have had a problem with as well with that movie was that, and it sort of took on the tone of the early Turtles comics and the graphic novels and things like that, is that, the Turtles cursed and stuff a little bit in the first one. Not anything, it wasn't anything like major, but for some parents, especially, if you grew up in a really conservative household like I did, then my parents weren't crazy about that, that's like these turtles are cussing and everything, but it's still very, very, very tame compared to the stuff that is out there now.
That's what it is. Parents of that time were more conservative. That's what it is.
Yeah, and but they did, as we will see, and when we get into talking about the other movies, two movies, they did shift after this one. They did shift to a much more family-friendly tone. But I think this first movie definitely captures what the creators of the Ninja Turtles would have wanted. It matched that tone. Like I said, it was a little bit. It was still family friendly, but it was a little bit edgier. It was a little bit, darker as well. And I think that's why I liked it so much, because it wasn't your typical kid movie.
I didn't actually own any of the sequels. I only owned this one.
This one, yeah. Which I could certainly understand that. I mean, the second one is not awful. It's definitely enjoyable. The third one is absolutely horrible, and we'll definitely get into that when we do that episode. But there were some differences between this and the way the characters were portrayed in the comics. For example, April O'Neil in the comics, and especially in the animated series, she was always portrayed as maybe a little bit more of a bimbo, I think. Just in the way that she dressed, and she was a little bit more of a, I guess, a typical damsel in distress type. Yeah. Whereas Judith Hoag portrayed her as a much more capable, intelligent, strong, woman, who could, take care of herself, for the most part, and And I think that was a choice for her, that, you know, she wanted to play it that way. Like
Okay,
they tried to
definitely.
put her, they said they tried to put her in the jumpsuit, like they wanted her to basically look like, you know, the cartoon character. And she was like, absolutely not. She's like, I'm not going
Honestly,
to,
that would
you know.
have looked ridiculous because you're a news reporter. Why are you in a
Why would you
jumpsuit?
be wearing a jumpsuit? It's not a,
Yeah.
you know, you're not trying to make a fashion statement or anything there. You're just reporting the news. And so she held her own on that and didn't want the character to have that kind of goofiness. And although they did pay homage to it a little bit, because in the beginning of the movie,
She does
she wears
wear
a
a
yellow,
little bit of yellow, yeah.
raincoat, you know,
Yeah.
which was kind of a reference there. And with Splinter, in the comics, his like in the movie, he tells there's a flashback where he tells a story, his origin story, and then how the Turtles came to be, and he talks about his you know, he was a pet, and his master Hamato Yoshi, you know, owned him, and basically he would mimic his movements, and he learned ninjutsu by watching him. And then later on, of course, he was exposed to this mutagen, which was like this green, you know, ooze or whatever, and radioactive.
Side note, fun fact: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is technically a parody of Daredevil, and that ooze is fan fiction or whatever theorized that it was. The ooze was the same chemical that made Daredevil blind.
Exactly. Yeah. I forgot about those Daredevil ties.
Yeah,
and the Foot Clan.
And the Foot
Clan
Clan
is what, a parody of
The
the
Hand.
Hand in the Daredevil comics. Yeah. So there was a little
Okay, back to the Splinter.
So in the comics, Splinter was Hamato Yoshi. He was human. He was human and was transformed into a rat by the radioactive ooze. But in this one, they kind of changed that around a little bit, and it kind of makes more sense if you think about it, that he was already a rat, and then he just became a mutated rat when he became exposed to.
And I think they've changed Splinter's origin like 3 times. That's the one that I'm more comfortable with, like I love, and then I think they changed it a 3rd time for the reboot.
Yeah. But yeah, and same thing for the 4 turtles. You know, they were exposed to that same radioactive substance and mutated into walking, talking, you know, 5-foot turtles, and obviously they, you know, Master Splinter trained them in the art of ninjutsu, and they're, you know, expert martial arts fighters. And but it's, you know, it's a really fun movie to watch, and just you know, I think at any age, I think it's, you know, entertaining. Yeah, there are definitely some cheesy elements to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you just sit back and enjoy it for what it is a really enjoyable movie. And Casey Jones was another character that I wanted to talk about, which Elias Koteas does a great job. I love the way he portrayed the character in terms of, you know, his attitude and the way that, you know, his cockiness, but I always felt like, you know, because if you were familiar with the comics and the animated series, Casey Jones had a very different sort of look to him. You know, he was a much more muscular, like buff guy, and I always thought that, you know, Elias Koteas, while he was fit, you know, he seemed a little bit too thin. You know, for me to be, he didn't seem to, you know, he didn't have that like really like tough look to him, other than, you know, he had the long hair, you know, and everything, but. I guess at the time, I thought that he probably looked the least like the way the character was originally portrayed. But I do think he delivered on the way that he, you know, portrayed the character. I think he captured the feel, you know, the essence of the character.
Yeah, I do think he did. Yeah. In recent years, we've seen Casey Jones being portrayed by, most recently, from what I remember, he was portrayed by Stephen Amell. And well, I mean, honestly, pretty much, I don't think they've captured what made that first one great.
No, not in
years.
subsequent movies. They really haven't. It was just one of those things where it was, it was the perfect casting. They had, the perfect crew, the right people around them to make it happen. It was definitely a movie for its time. I don't think that I don't think it could be made the same way now and have the same effect that it did then. But yeah, it's definitely one of a kind in that sense. And
yeah, we'll never get puppetry again. And now it's going to be all CGI all the time.
Which I think, I don't know. To me, it cheapens it even more. Some people would say that the puppetry, the animatronics made it look cheesy, but I think it adds realism to it.
I'd try. It does, because not only that, but you also get the sense that the actors, something about CGI is kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You have this what do you call it?
You have like you have that mixture of animation and live action.
There's a uncanny valley. You have to do it correctly in order to make it look real. Like, okay, so in recent years, even the Marvel movies kind of been slacking with the CGI. I'm sure you remember when you saw like Avengers Endgame and you saw Thanos. Thanos is completely CGI, but he looked so real, right? But there's this fine line where you actually look at the CGI and you're like, I can tell it's CGI. When you look at a puppet, your brain might be saying, yeah, I can tell it's a puppet, but it's so much easier to believe the puppet being a real thing.
Yeah, because it's actually moving within the scene and and interacting with the other actors.
I'd say if I were to be a filmmaker, this is how I would use puppetry and CGI. Puppetry would be the main thing. Puppetry, I love puppetry. And I know exactly why studios don't want to do puppetry anymore. Money.
Yeah.
It costs too much. And things break and everything like that, so they're like, too much money, don't want to do that anymore.
Too many people, takes too many people to control them, and it's just really complicated.
So it saves them money to do CGI. I hate doing that, but
some CGI is good. Some CGI looks fantastic, and it really adds to a movie, but in some cases I feel like it cheapens it.
I would combine them. Use CGI to enhance the puppetry. Yeah. I'd do it that way. Because you might be able to use the puppetry and be like, you know what? This would be a great moment to CGI a tear. Don't CGI a tear with an actual actor, but CGI a tear with a puppet. Or,
if you, like in the case of Splinter in this movie, because, he doesn't actually, unlike the Turtles, he doesn't walk like through the scenes because he's a stationary puppet, but that would be an opportunity to
actually get him to
allow him to move,
maybe even actually do some kung fu moves, and you're like, oh,
right, yeah, because we don't really get to see that much in this movie except at the very end at the rooftop battle between the Turtles and him and the Shredder.
I'm putting it out there. We need to make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You and me, let's do it.
Yep, might as well. Yeah. Why not?
Why not? Seth Rogen's making one, so it's going to be completely animated, but we'll do live action.
Yeah, yep, we'll do it. We'll do it old school. And that was another thing. I thought that I thought they did a pretty good job with the Shredder in this movie. Although again, I think his physique. The guy that played the Shredder seemed to be pretty small.
He's wearing a disco suit too.
Yeah, it's like it's very like a red kind of satiny. Yeah. It sort of glistens a little bit, and
he stole it from Michael Jackson.
Yeah, The mask was cool though. I mean,
The mask was cool. The mask was cool.
But yeah, I thought the actor that portrayed him, I thought he was a little bit. It just because he had the big shoulder pads on because he's got those blades on his shoulder, but it didn't. It was like the blades were like too big for the actor's body. Like it just didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. He was like very short and slim and. He just didn't really have that intimidating sort of look. Again, in the comics and everything, the Shredder was an imposing, specimen. He was big and tall and muscular, and they probably could have, if they'd gone back and done that again. I probably would have gotten probably would have gotten a professional wrestler or somebody like that or a bodybuilder to portray that because they dubbed his voice anyway. I mean, James Sato played the Shredder physically, but it was a different actor who actually provided the voice. So if you don't need the voice, you can literally put anybody in that suit, and it wouldn't matter.
It was probably really easy to dub him too, because I just now thought of it. You never actually see the actor actually move his lips
because he's always got his face covered.
The only time that he removes it, and then they actually cut it to Splinter's reaction when he's talking.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you could have easily put anybody else in that role and it would have been fine, but it still it still worked for what it was. I think it was still effective, and again it's a fun movie I think for anybody to watch, and if nothing else just check it out for the the advances in puppetry, animatronics, and all that, because it really is cool what they were able to do with that. And considering that it didn't really have a huge budget. I mean, I think it was like a $13.5 million budget, and of course it made far beyond that at the box office. Nobody, there were other studios that didn't really want to touch it. They went to like Warner Brothers and Disney and like all of the major film studios at the time, and none of them wanted to touch it because they thought it was going to bomb.
Years later, Paramount's like, this is gold, we're going to take it, and they honestly haven't done too well. But
because if you think about it, by the time this movie was filming, like movies like Batman hadn't come out yet. Like it hadn't been released at the time that this movie was in production, and so they were going on past comic book movies and their performance, like because a few years prior the fourth Superman movie did not fare really well at the box office, so it was like comic book movies seemed to be on the decline at that point, but Batman resurrected it. But yeah, I mean they felt like they were going to be taking a huge risk with this movie, and so eventually they decided to pass it off to New Line Cinema, which was still a fairly new studio. It's a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, but they hadn't been around for that long, really.
When Warner Brothers is in doubt of the production of a movie, they'll take it to New Line.
Pretty much. But it worked. It turned out to be a good payoff for them, because they didn't have to spend a whole lot of money on the movie, and it made back probably triple what they actually produced it for. But anyway, I think it's still a great movie. It still holds up. Something that the whole family can watch, and I believe obviously the movies are all available on DVD and Blu-ray, but I think they're all on Netflix as well. I think all three of the original, at least they were the last time that I looked. They maybe, Netflix is always like
removing stuff,
taking their titles in and out. But
contracts, contracts run out, so.
But definitely plenty of places where you can check that out. But we are pretty much out of time for today. But before we go, as always, I want to remind everybody to subscribe, like, and share to our YouTube channel. And when you subscribe, be sure to tap that little bell icon on there so that you're receiving all the notifications whenever new episodes or content are posted. and we're trying to do more of that besides the episodes themselves. We've been posting a lot of shorts and clips and things like that, so we're just trying to keep keep everybody engaged and promoting what we're doing. So also check us out on our socials. We're on all the major social media platforms, and we'll have those links for you on the bottom of your screen, as well as down below in the video's description and in the end credits of every episode, so there's no way you can miss that. Also, plenty of other places where you can catch the podcast, whether you want to watch it or listen to it. So we'll have those links for you in the video's description as well. But the big thing is that we want to hear from you. So leave your comments and questions for us. You can do that by commenting on YouTube on each episode, or you can go to our socials and leave your comments on there, or you can shoot us an email on our official podcast email, kimmellandcox@gmail.com. So be sure to do that when you have a chance, and hey, let us know who's your favorite Ninja Turtle. Do you have a favorite? We'd love to know that.
Shoot, who's your favorite?
Mine would probably I kind of went back and forth between Raphael and Michelangelo.
Mm-hmm.
I would sort of I went through phases. I would kind of go back and forth between those two.
I'd go back and I honestly cannot pick. I love all.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. They each have different strengths to offer, and you can kind of I can kind of see a little bit of each of them in myself. I think we try to find things that we identify with in the characters that we love, and so I can find different aspects of each one of their personalities that kind of fit with me. But
I'm going to have to go with Donatello.
He's the tech
as well.
But Donatello, of course, he's the techie. He would be the computer geek out of the group, and so I could see that. I could see that working for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know what you think of this episode. Is there anything that you all in particular would like to see, would like to hear us talk about in the future? Just leave us those comments, and that'll certainly help us out a lot. And also be sure to check out our Patreon page. That's a way where you can support us in a different kind of way by actually contributing towards the podcast. In essence, you would be like a producer, because that's what producers do. Producers either provide the money or they find the money, in order to to make a production. And so if you're able to, every little bit helps. So whatever you can contribute is going to make a big difference for us, and we will certainly give you the proper credit you deserve for doing that. So be sure to go on that page and check out some of the perks that we're offering there, and see if there's anything that stands out to you. Next week, we will be continuing our series on the Turtles. We'll be talking about the next movie in the franchise, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. So we'll find out a little bit more background about that radioactive substance that transformed the Turtles and Splinter, and where it comes from. And
I'm definitely going to have to rewatch that one, because for some reason my brain is mixing up, weirdly, that one and the more recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows.
Oh, okay.
For some reason I'm picturing Tyler Perry in the movie, and I'm like, wait a minute, he wasn't in that. He was in the...
It's like, well, Tyler Perry's involved with so much. I mean, it's easy to it's like, no, Tyler Perry wasn't in that movie, or was he? I don't know. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about that next week, and we certainly hope you'll join us for that. But until then, be good to yourselves, and we'll see you next time.